Hello, welcome back to another episode of Cloud Structure. Today we are going to learn an important topic, that is DHCP. So, my name is Amarnath Mishra and I warmly welcome all of you to our channel, that is Blue Crest College BCC Broadcast. So, today's topic is DHCP. It means that Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol. Basically, we used to provide the IP address in an organization where we provide two methods of IP address. One is static IP address, one is dynamic IP address. So for large organization, providing an IP address in a DHCP, that is the easier method to provide the IP address and troubleshoot. Today we are going to learn how to configure a DHCP. For configuration of DHCP, we will check the connectivity between the servers, that is in the cloud system. So we'll ping first. So ping 10.0.0.1 and it is responding over here. We'll also check the another server in the cloud system, that is 10.0.0.2, and we can see that it is also responding very well. So now we'll connect to our server, that is we'll take a remote connection. So we'll connect to our server, that is 10.0.0.2. When we connect, so now it is asking for the credential. So it will connect to the server. So this is my cloud system, and here you can see that a lot of servers are running over here. Within that, we'll connect to our cloud system where we want to configure the DHCP. So we'll connect to our DHCP configuration server. So we'll log in over here. So we can see that the domain name is Bluecrest administrator. We'll log in here. So this is my server where we will configure the DHCP. So this is the dashboard of the server manager. We'll move to the roles. So now we'll check connectivity and the IP address. So we'll check the local server over here. We'll check with the IP and the names. So we'll configure the IP address. So here it is, IP is 10.0.0.70, and we'll configure according to this range. We'll configure the DHCP. So already we have seen that first step, that is we need to configure the static IP address to the server. So it is already configured with the static IP address with the subnet mask and DNS address. So we'll click OK. We'll close this. We'll move to the system, and now we'll go to install the services, that is roles. So we'll move to the dashboard. Now it is in the dashboard. So now we'll move to the dashboard, and over here we'll go to the manage. When we come to the manage, add roles and features. When we come to the add roles and features, you can see that the welcome wizard has pop up over here, and we'll move to the next. We'll select the role based feature based installation. We'll go to the next. This is very good, that is we have seen that the server name is already in the FQDN format and the IP is 10.0.0.70. So we'll move to the next, and here you can see that it is not installed with the DHCP. So first we'll install the roles. First we'll install the roles of DHCP. So we'll add features. Go to the next. So you can see that it will configure the IP pool over here. So we'll go to the next. Again we'll move to the next, and you can see the descriptions of the DHCP configurations, that is DHCP features of that IP based structure. So now we'll move to the next. We'll select the checkbox for the restart if it is required, because what happens whenever we install the services, system used to restart for the changes. So we'll install now. So it is going on installing. So mostly DHCP works with the IP. So here what we used to do, that is IP can be configured for two methods, that is in the form of your DHCP format, or it will be in the form of your static IP address. So mostly we configure the IP address in two methods, that is static IP and the dynamic IP. So when we provide the dynamic IP, mostly it is configured with the DHCP server. So DHCP roles is installing over here. So it is been configuring the DHCP roles. Once it is installed, we will configure the DHCP scope also. So services are loading over here. So two methods, I was explaining you that two methods are there to provide the IP address. Two method of providation of IP address, that is, one is static IP address, second one is the dynamic IP address. So when we provide the static IP address, we need to provide manually IP address. When we provide the dynamic IP address, it is automatically, it will configure the IP address to the client system. So services are installed. Now we'll close this. We'll move to the, so the moment we install that DHCP roles, you can see that in the left panel in the dashboard, the DHCP is already pop up over here. And we have seen that the notification area here, the DHCP has been ready to configure. So you can see that it is already installed, and now it is required to configure the DHCP server. If you click over here, it will ask you to pop up with the DHCP configuration. We can configure with the administrator and users. So over here we can complete with the DHCP authorization. So we'll close here. Now we'll move to the tools. So the moment we go to the tools, we will see that the DHCP services are already installed. We'll recall the DHCP server services to configure. So you can see that this is the server name in the FQDN format, that is cloud_server.bluecrest.com. There is FQDN where we have configured the DHCP, and you can see that the DHCP service is highlighted over here. So it is already running. So we will now connect. We'll come to the IP version 4 because DHCP will be configured in two methods, that is in IP version 4 and IP version 6. So we have seen that this is IP version 4. Now we'll configure the scope over here. So in IP version 4, we'll right click and we'll go for the new scope. So scope is basically the range of IP address through which the client will acquire the IP address. So here we can see that there is a welcome wizard has appeared, that is for the scope. So new welcome wizard has came here. We'll go to the next, where we will configure the scope name. So we'll put the name of the scope, that is scope 1, and we'll put the description, that is DHCP scope. So we have given the name and the description of the scope. Now we'll move to the next. We'll put the range of the addresses through which the IP address will be provided to the respective client of the DHCP. So whichever client will request for the IP address from the DHCP server, it will provide from the addresses within this scope. So I'll provide the range of address, that is 10.0.0.1 to 10.0.0.100, because we will check that our IP, it should be in the same range of IP. So I'll show you the IP address, that is, so if you see the IP address, it is the range, the address is within the same class over here. So now we'll provide the IP address. We have already configured the range, that is in the class. You can see that the length of the address is 8 and 10.0.0.1 to 10.0.0.100. So now we'll move to the next. Here we can exclude the addresses. So we'll put the exclusion of address, that is 10.0.0.1 to 10.0.0.70. So we'll add this. So address will be starting. The client will acquire the address from the 71. We'll go to the next. And here you can see that the lease duration is by default 8 days. So as per the requirement, we can change the lease days also. So duration is already over here. So 8 days it has taken. So it is good to go. We'll move to the next. And I will configure this scope right now. So we'll go to next. We can also provide the router gateway address, that is 10.0.0.70. I'll put the address gateway as a router address of same address which is in the server. We'll move to the next, and you can see that it has been already taken in the DNS structure. It has already taken as the bluecrest.com, and the address is 10.0.0.70. So it has been resolving that this name has been resolved with the same IP address. We'll go to the next. it is good to go. That is, we can see that everything is fine. We'll move to the next, and I will configure the scope right now. So we can also, if it is required, we can configure this scope in the later option also is there, but we will configure over here right now because we are going to see the effect of the DHCP. So that is the last of the wizard where we have configured everything is fine, and we can finish this scope. So you can see that the scope is configured now. Here you can see that the scope is over here, and we will drag the scope, and over here we have created the scope. Within the scope there is an address pool is there. We have already configured 10.0.0.1 to 10.0.0.100, where we have excluded the address of 10.0.0.1 to 10.0.0.70. So this is the range, and this is the address which we have excluded. So host will be taking address from 71. So if you check with the host release duration, that is the address list, there's none of the host has been taken the IP address over here till now. So now we will configure the client system now. So we have completed the portion of DHCP server side. Now we need to configure the client. So we'll go to the network. So now we'll minimize here, and we will connect to the server, and we will go to the client system. We'll check the connectivity of the same network switch. We'll first check the switch over here. So it is connected to the external switch, and we'll check with the external switch. It is connected, so that we'll restrict it. So now you can see that we have configured our DHCP server over here. Now we'll move to the client system, and in the client system we'll connect. This is our client system. So we'll log in. It is asking for the credential. When we log in, after that we'll check that the IP address has been acquired by the client or not. By the meantime, we'll also check the connectivity. So we'll go to the settings, and we'll put in the same switch over here, so that it will be able to communicate with each other. So I will check. We'll put in the same virtual switch over here, so that both the systems should be in the same network for the acquisition of the IP address. So system is logging in. By the meantime, we'll also configure the network switch. So it has been configured with the network switch, and it is ready to go. So now you can see that the system has logged in already. This is my client system, where we will check for the client for acquiring the IP address in the client system. So we'll connect the system, and here we will go to connect for the network. So we'll move to the network sharing center, that is ncpa.cpl, and we have already came to the network sharing center. So we'll configure now IP address. So here you can see that it is configured with the TCP/IP version 4, and we'll move to the properties, and it is configured with the static IP address. We'll make it as a obtain IP address automatically. The moment I say obtain IP address automatically, it will acquire IP address from the DHCP server. So you can see that it is identifying the IP address, and it will take the IP address from the DHCP server. So if you go for the details, it has not yet taken IP address till now. So we'll check that the IP address of the server, so that it will be able to take or not. So you can see that the system is already configured with the IP address, and now we'll check with our client system. So we'll move to the client system, so that we'll check that it is configured with the IP address or not. So here you can see that It has not taken the IP address, so we will go to the troubleshooting features. So now we'll move to the cloud system and we'll go for network configuration. We'll configure this in the same network and we'll put in the same network both the systems so that it will able to take the IP address. Now we'll connect to the system and we'll try to check the IP address is configured or not. We'll disable and enable one more time. It is not taking IP address. We'll move to the server system. We'll connect here. We'll connect to the server system. We'll check now DHCP server. So we'll refresh the DHCP server and we'll so you can see that the service is down. So what we will do, we'll activate this one. So right click, authorize the DHCP server and we'll refresh it now again. So it will become up. So you will see now it will take the IP address. So we have seen already one client has came here and we'll check now that client has taken the IP address or not. So we'll move to the client system, we'll connect it and now it has taken the IP address. So it is 10.0.0.71.255.0.0.0 and it is taking exactly 8 days lease period over here, and this is the default gateways and DHCP server address is also there. IP address has been acquired from the DHCP server and this information, that is the MAC address, that is 00155D000210, is been taken to the DHCP server, through which against that this IP address has been provided to the client. So we'll move to the server, DHCP server, and you can see here this is the IP which has been provided to the DHCP client. This is the name of the client system and this is the expiration date, lease time, and this is the MAC address which is acquired by the DHCP server. Against that the IP address has been provided. So I hope you have understand that how to configure a DHCP server. So if you want to learn more about the technologies like server, cloud, network, so please visit to our college, 77 Wilkinson Road, Freetown. Thank you.